So I just finished Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, one of the sort of most famous, or most popular, most well-regarded science fiction novels. And it was written in 1932, or 1931, published in 1932, which is very interesting because a lot of the technology and stuff in it, like it aged very well, I think. Oh, well, aside from the slightly concerning racial aspects of it, although it's not eugenics based, it's much more nurture versus nature. So this is like a world that takes it's a dystopian world where people are no longer born. People are grown in labs, well, in factories, very much factory assembly line sort of style. And it's not that, cause this is before the discovery of the DNA molecule. So like 1931, it's well before that. But 1931, like think of the Europe in the 1930s, like eugenics and racial superiority was a very big thing. But interestingly, he writes that it's not, people are not selected to be better or worse. People are instead nurtured to be better or worse. So this society has a caste system with like the sort of the rulers and the people with the most freedom who are the most intelligent, and then those slightly lower down until we get to people with very low intelligence who are just used for menial labor, almost like a slave labor force. And people aren't, like I said, people aren't selected for or bred for these traits. It is all nurture. They're all raised with, like, for example, the fetuses of those who are going to be in the lower castes are given alcohol. So, like, purposefully creating fetal alcohol syndrome. So I think that's just really interesting that he went with that choice, the author, given that eugenics was such a huge thing in the 1930s, that he decided to go for the nurture over the nature. So we're in this world where people have helicopters because helicopters are cool technology, and there are different religion has been eliminated. Everyone holds everything in common. It's a weird sort of communism because it has capitalist. It's a weird blend of communism and capitalism. So I guess in terms of religion, they do sort of have a religion in that they worship Henry Ford, which is kind of strange. I wish I could find out what Henry Ford, because he was still alive when this book was published, what he would have thought of it. So they worship Henry Ford and sort of the ideals of the capitalist ideals of manufacturing and assembly line and standardization, and they sort of see it as a moral good to consume. There's a lot of consumerism where repairing things or fixing things or holding on to old things is seen as a bad thing because that's reducing consumption. So if something breaks or if you get a hole in your pants, toss them and buy new ones. That's a good thing because you're buying more, you're consuming more, you're feeding the economy. So in that aspect, it feels very much pro-capitalist. But socially, it's very communist. People are all held in common. The individual is totally gone. To be alone is a moral wrong. There are no family units. Like I said, people are grown. People do not have children. The idea of a mother and a father is sort of obtuse, revolting, sort of seen as wrong to them. People are totally sexually free, and they are encouraged to have multiple partners and be constantly there's no moral qualms whatsoever about monogamous or polygamous versus monogamous or polyandrous. So yeah, it's seen as sort of a bad thing if you tend to partner up with the same person multiple times or over long periods. It's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Like, you're being, I don't think it's seen as being selfish, but there is something wrong or seen to be wrong about that. There's also no jealousy either, and these are all things that have been conditioned out of these people as children through hypnopedic methods. So like when they're asleep, having these messages pumped into their brains so their subconscious picks up on them. There is a lot of Freudian stuff. Like, for example, at one point in the book, they're like, because they worship Ford and sort of worship Ford, but they said they're like Ford or Freud, as he for some reason referred to himself when he was talking about psychology. So they've conflated Henry Ford and Sigmund Freud. Anyways, I wonder how popular Freud was in the 1930s. Probably still pretty popular. Anyways, I've gone off track, but yeah, people are sort of. It's interesting because the genders are still there, but there are these people known as free martins who are either ungendered, but not unsexed, but people who can't reproduce biologically, but for whatever reason they keep people around that still can reproduce biologically, so they just have abortion centers and this like very. They call them the Malthusian devices after, was it Thomas Malthus? Anyways, the population guy that thought we were going to overpopulate ourselves. These devices, like birth control devices, I say devices, it's, I assume they're like chemicals and drugs and stuff, but much bulkier and than the modern equivalents. How it's written is very interesting. So it seems to be in sort of 3 parts, which seem quite discontiguous to me. The first part is like world building, introducing you to the world. You're going through the factory, through the eyes of a group of children who are seeing the factory where people are, where the fetuses and sort of the eggs and the sperm meet, and the fetuses are grown, and the children are conditioned. So that sort of gives you a hint of the world, and then we jump to a character, Lenina, who's going out with this guy, Henry Foster, I think his name is, and they go on a date, and then we're thrown into the POV of this guy, Bernard Marx, who is really upset because he doesn't fit into this society. He wants to be alone, and he gets really this sort of angry jealousy because he really likes Lenina, but he hates how everyone uses her for sexual purposes and how she willingly gives herself up for sexual purposes and indeed is using everyone else for these same purposes. And then we sort of follow his character, and he's decided he's going to go on vacation to the Savage Zone, it's called, where people are uncivilized. So this world state that has been conditioning humans all over the globe, there are still regions that for economic reasons are not worth civilizing, so they just leave them as is, kind of as like national parks where everything is sort of conserved, and there are people living there who are living what to us would be regular lives. So anyway, so Bernard Marx is going to go off there, so he asks Lenina to come with him, and Lenina's kind of was like interested in him and was like, well, yeah, sure, I'll go with you. So they go out there, and there is a group of Native Americans, I can't think of which nation it is, but that are living out there, and they're living, they're described as like being, because it's through Bernard Marx's eyes, who's seen this sort of the sterilized, conditioned, perfect to him utopian society. So through his eyes, it's seen as like dirty and gross, and that people are aging, which in the civilized world, there's no more aging. There are drugs and stuff that keep people youthful until they drop dead at 60, in their 60s. So anyway, so here people are very wrinkled and old and fat, and it just seems wrong, and people are monogamously coupled, and people are producing children like biologically, and it's kind of horrifying to him, but it's also sort of it's kind of what he was looking for, so he's kind of he kind of feels good about it. They meet this woman Linda, who it turns out was not the girlfriend, but had gone to visit this place with Bernard's old boss, the director. And she had gotten lost, so he had left without her. So she has been living here the past, I don't know, 40, 30 years or whatever. And she's had a child, John, who, so John is his mother is Linda, who wants to go back to the civilized world, but he's been raised in this world with these Native Americans, but he's not really part of that world because they don't accept him because he's different. Whatever, but they have a copy of Shakespeare there, and now any old literature or any old thing is not sort of permitted. This world's heavily censored. But in the Savage Zone, there's a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare, so John has read and memorized the entirety of Shakespeare. So anyway, so Bernard's kind of interested, like, oh, there's these people who are sort of from both worlds. He calls up sort of the head of the government in Europe and is like, hey, can I take these guys back? Like, it could be an interesting social experiment. So he gets permission, and they go back to London, and has taken these people, and people are kind of grossed out by Linda because she's very old, and she confronts the director, and the director gets mocked that he like produced a child with this creature. And so he resigns in embarrassment, and then Linda just exists the rest of her life in sort of a drugged stupor. She takes this drug Soma, which is a drug that everyone sort of takes. It's sort of a hallucinogenic and an antidepressant. People take it if they're ever feeling anxious or upset, or they just want a break. It's like there's no alcohol in this world, so they take this drug, and it does everything for them. Depending on how much they take, they can take a whole bunch and go on sort of a weekend long trip, and then sort of come to and there's no ill effects. So anyway, so Linda spends the rest of her life just like drugged up until she dies in the crematorium in Slough. So she's like, death is not seen as sort of a bad thing because there's no strong interpersonal connections. Like, when someone starts to get senile, they go to this crematorium where they wait to die, then they die, and then they're cremated, and their phosphorus, they point out, is reclaimed so that they can reuse the phosphorus. But anyways, and children are sent to the crematorium and are like given treats and sort of have a good time, so that they associate death with positive things, and so that they're used to it, and so it's no big deal. But like I said, there's no interpersonal relations, so there's no mothers and fathers, and there's no partners. I guess you'd have close friends, but if one of your close friends died, you would have multiple others. Same with lovers. If one of your lovers died, well, you've got multiple others. So it's not, death is just seen as just a thing that happens. There's no emotion tied to it. Yeah, so Linda dies, but John, her son's there, and he's really distraught and upset because his mother's died, and sort of everyone's confused, and there's all these children crawling around sort of looking at her because she's very grotesque, and they're just like sort of mocking her and mocking him, and he's very upset. So John, he goes to, I think it's still in the hospital, where they're giving out the Soma. It's sort of like their pay. I guess it's not their pay because they do get paid, but they get a ration of Soma. Depending on what caste you're in, you get more or less access to it. And so during this, John has a big speech about how you guys aren't free, and I want to free you. And he takes the drugs and he's throwing them out the window, and it's a big scene. And Bernard, I haven't talked about Bernard, but Bernard's been he was really upset and not content with his life. But then when he found John, he brought John back. He sort of became a celebrity. He sort of used John as like a zoo animal that all these important people would come to him, and all these women would want to have sex with him, and Bernard sort of falsely felt sort of like he found his place in life as this sort of celebrity. But then John stopped complying, so Bernard was rejected by everyone and hadn't realized that Bernard's just a whiny little, not a great guy. Anyways, so Bernard's there, as well as Bernard has this friend Helmholtz Watson, who is like an artist, a writer, a poet, but he works for the propaganda department, so all the poetry and the rhymes, he calls them rhymes, he has to make, are just very simplistic things that sort of maintain the conditioning of the population. And he wants to sort of write his own stuff, and he tried that, but it was seen as too individualistic, and he was attacked for it. So anyway, so Bernard, Helmholtz, and John are all at this place. There's a big kerfuffle and fight over the soma that's being thrown out, and they all get gathered back and taken to see the controller, this guy who's sort of who's running all of Western Europe, and he tells them, like, he's read Shakespeare, he's read the Bible, he knows he's the one who knows everything because he's the one who creates the laws, so he's allowed to break them. So he has a couple chapter long discussion with John about what is better, like happiness and stability or truth and beauty. And that's the whole thing, is that this society has sacrificed truth and beauty in order to have happiness and stability. And John's arguing that he'd much rather have unhappiness and sort of the benefits of actually struggling and failing and trying and not having this instant gratification that this society has, and how the importance of religion and morals and whatnot. And it's interesting because it's written in a way that you could take either side. The author's not leaning one way or the other. There's no straw man argument one way or the other. So it sort of ends with these three, or I guess just the two of them, Bernard and Helmholtz. Whenever people sort of are not content with living in this society, in order to preserve stability, these people are sent to an island, and there's these various islands like Iceland, the Falklands, throughout the world, where people are sent, and that's sort of a community of others who feel the same way as them, discontents. So it keeps those sort of people out of the stable society, but also they don't just execute them. So anyway, so they go off there, but they won't let John go for some reason. John stays. He buys a whole bunch of tools and seeds and food and stuff, and goes to find as much of an isolated place as he can, and sort of tries to grow his own farm. He starts self-flagellating and beating himself up because he's convinced now that any form of pleasure is wrong, and he needs to be feeling pain and suffering all the time. So he does that, but people notice him, and he sort of becomes an object of curiosity, and people come and try and watch him. One guy eventually films him and creates not a movie, they call it a feely. So it's like goes beyond it, where a movie is just visual and auditory. A feely is like all of the senses. So anyway, so this guy creates a feely of John whipping himself, and that causes just a horde of people to come and sort of stare at him, and again act like he's a zoo animal, which he hates. And he gets into a bit of a fight with this mob, and he attacks this girl, and then other people start attacking each other, and it's this weird sort of orgy of violence and whatnot. So he wakes up the next day, and he's like distraught over what happened, and then all the people show up again, and sort of the same thing happens, and then it ends with people showing up to go see him again, and they just see like he's hanged himself, and that's how it ends. He just couldn't exist in that world. So it was very interesting, but like I said, it felt very discongruous. the first section almost read like a Kubrick film. Like I would have loved to have seen this movie, or sorry, this book made into a film by Stanley Kubrick. Like it would have like one sentence paragraphs, and then a one sentence paragraph jumping between three different viewpoints, and that was so visual and really cool. So I really enjoyed that first bit of the world building, and then we sort of jumped to Bernard Marx's POV, and he was the protagonist, and we him worrying about how much he likes Lena or Lenina, and but then the third sort of arc was we've shifted and it's all about John and John's POV, and it just sort of felt like not even three distinct parts, just there wasn't a very strong through line throughout the book, I felt, but what do I know? But yeah, I'm glad I read it, of course. It's always interesting to read older sci-fi, especially one from the 1930s. And also one that was so influential. Like I can see a lot of these tropes and ideas brought up again and again in later science fiction. So yeah, so that was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.